Sounds good. So yeah, we'll start with the weekly engineering allocation update. So we have two InfraDev issues left still. One is much closer. One was around adding caching. We kind of rolled that all out slowly over the past week and seemed like it was working. But then there was a production incident that coincidentally happened around the same time as we finally moved it. So they flipped it off right away, but that didn't seem to affect the production incident. So it doesn't look like we had anything to do with it. It was just, we just had some bad timing there. So we're pretty close on that one. And then there's an N+1 issue that we're still working on, but making progress. So that's good. The other one is that there's our error budgets are getting close. So it's at 99.90. We're trying to get to 99.95, which at this rate, we should be there, I think, kind of mid next week sometime, which will be good. A lot of that has to do with we changed the threshold from 1 second up to 5 seconds. So most of our requests are safely within that 5 second threshold. But it's going to take 28 days total to get all the data like filled into all the right buckets. And we have about 10 days left of that process, I think. So that's why it's kind of slowly increasing. And then, but that said, that's kind of that 5 second threshold is kind of a temporary threshold. And the next step eventually will be, we're going to have to classify our endpoints in like buckets of like slow, medium, fast, or something generic like that. And then they'll start tuning those down. So if we expect a endpoint should be fast, they might change that to be like a 1 second threshold instead of 5. And that's not going to happen quite yet, but I suspect that'll happen relatively soon. That said, we're to preempt Kai's next question that he hasn't asked yet about when we're going to get out of the engineering allocation. I don't know. And I did ask Darva and Christopher are working on kind of exit criteria for all of the groups that have engineering allocations. To me, it seems like if we finish our InfraDev issues and our error budgets are green, that should be the end of it. But we're trying to actually define that. So that process is ongoing right now. But there should be an update to the handbook, is what I heard, coming soon, that will have like more defined exit criteria. All right. So now, are there any more questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the N+1 issue, because I know there was like a huge improvement in it sort of immediately, and now it feels like we're I don't want to say nitpicking, but nitpicking like some like it reminds me of like when we get the performance issues out of the quality team and they're like, oh, congrats on making it to 267 milliseconds. The threshold was 250, so like keep going. And you're like, I mean, there's not much we can do here.
Right.
It feels a little bit like that. And so I'm wondering, like, should we, and it doesn't, I don't know, I've been watching, it doesn't feel like we have really strong opinions or ideas on how to fix this. So I'm wondering if this is one of those things where we should be like, look, we made the big improvement that we could, and like, we'll open another issue, but it's like even less of a severity and priority, given that this one was sort of like a P4, S4, like further optimizations feel like maybe not the best allocation of time.
Sure.
But I don't know if we've thought about that.
Yeah. Right. We thought, and Gary thought that he kind of had a path forward. So I was thinking, oh, we'll just, go do that, and then we'll be done with this issue. It turns out that's taking a little bit longer than expected. So I'll check with him later today and see what the status is, and see if he's a day or two away from having an MR. That's different than we don't know anything, and or it's going to be weeks more work, then that's a different discussion. So I'll check with him and see what the kind of the next steps are. It like every day it seems like it's like, oh yeah, okay, we know what to do, and then something else comes up and it's like, oh, but we can't quite do it that way. So so that's why it's kind of dragging on. But yeah, I agree that if we made some big improvements in 2 areas, and so there's just kind of one left that at least that we know about, where it's if you do commenting on a bunch of different commits, then you get this crazy exploding n+1 error. So it's I don't know how common that specific use case is either. But
Yeah,
it does explode in that case. So yeah, but like you said, if we want to create a follow-on issue, we could do that as well if this is going to continue to take more and more time.
yeah, I think, and to me, I think the point of doing a follow-on issue, and what I think we should try and figure out if we'll be allowed to, or if we can communicate appropriately, is that like we're willing to have like a follow-on issue, but we also like we intentionally like don't want to action it, because like using that engineer to work on something like mergeability or these other things that have like a known work path and like bigger product and, you know, improvements and reliability, or like a more valuable use of that time. And I think that's the thing that I'm concerned that we might spend a ton of time in this for very little gain, or for sort of an edge case, or for something else. And like, we need to address those, sure, but we do have a finite amount of capacity.
Sure, that's it. Yep.
Did you have any sense on error budgets? I know the 5-second thing is supposed to be temporary, although I think it's pending their ability to classify, right, and give endpoints different lengths. Is they given any sense of timing of when they expect that?
No, nothing specific other than it's in progress, and the infrastructure team's kind of figuring out how to do it. So I think it's there's 2 steps. One is being able to actually do it, and then it's going to be working with every team to actually classify. And so I don't know. We'll have to discuss how we do that at that point.
How the question I have is, how are we discussing potential ways to classify those things? Because some endpoints, just like we saw in the large MR, it's usually a percentile conversation, because like most of like 98 percentile of the request should be below a second, but we're always going to have outliers, right? I know that this is an average, I guess. So
well, this is, the error budgets would count those like 1 or 2% outliers as affecting our error budget. So I don't know if we just say like, oh, the longest ones take this long, but I don't think that's not really the spirit of it, right? the idea would be, but no, I don't know that we've really discussed how we're going to do that yet.
I know Anoop has been trying to talk with Christopher and Eric about error budgets, because they represent both legitimate errors and Apdex scores, which are not actually errors, but you get penalized for like being above the Apdex thresholds, which is why they move them up to 5 seconds. And so Anoop has been trying to suggest that these things be separated, because you should not be penalized for things going slow. Is sort of like, that might be well unintentioned, and like even then we shouldn't like, if you had to achieve 100% to not go below your threshold, then like we've basically implemented 100% availability budget, which is like sort of unreasonable. So like we're trying to figure out how to like deal with those 2 things as being treated as one, and then what the options are. Because I agree. I think like even if we classify some as 5, 3, and 1 seconds, like occasionally things are going to be slow, and like that's sort of the nature of like these bigger data sets, and like we just won't know about them.
Yeah, definitely. And for our team, that error rate components of the error budget, we have pretty much 100% success rate. So it's all that slow requests, and it's not it's that AppDex slow request is really the thing that's impacting our error budget the most. Yeah, and part of the 5-second thing was to say, okay, if it's just slow requests, then those teams should be good for a while, and then we'll focus on the teams that are still in that red category after this full 5-second rollout. There is I put it in the I don't know, somewhere. I'll find it, but there's a monthly report on each team's error budget. We're currently classified as, well, we're still over budget, but we suspect that we'll be within budget within the next couple of weeks. So they're not too worried about it. There's a handful, maybe 10 groups that are over budget, and we suspect they will continue to be over budget. So that's the big focus right now, is on those groups. Thank you for linking that. Okay. Any other questions on error budgets or InfraDev?
Nope.
Okay, then I have the next one too. We had talked last week a little bit about the mid-milestone check-in and if we need it or anything. So I just created this Periscope SciSense dashboard that has the calculation in it, so we don't have to do any manually weighting it or manual calculations. Andre, do you have comment, question?
I'm curious just because I noticed you got the weights in there. So great job. Thanks. It looks amazing. I'm just wondering, does it distinguish between the front end weight label or just the weight on the issue?
Yeah, that's one
it's tricky
thing that I haven't spent any time on. So yeah, there's probably overlap in those issues if they have both the front end. It only looks at the front end label or the back end label, and then just the weight, total weight on the issue. So
okay, no worries. We'll improve it.
Yeah, exactly.
For now looks really good. Thanks for that.
I figured it would be close enough for what we're doing. Yeah.
I'm adding a link to the header of this document, if you don't mind. Anybody objects?
Yeah. I started to update the handbook too, and I'll get that link in there. It was just, I ran into a little confusion because that whole section of our handbook looks like it was shared with the code or the source code team probably when they split, but now I don't think the source code team does anything like this. I don't know, Andre, I don't know if you know, but I don't think it's in the source code handbook anymore. So I have to convert it from the shared thing to.
I think that was under Michelle. I didn't have a lot of visibility on it.
Yeah, that's fine. So, but I'll get it there.
There should be a shared page for front end and back end under code review. There's one code review page now. It might use partials though. So
that was the thing. There's a partial that was shared between the code review group and the source code group, their main pages. So I might have to update that a little bit, but it doesn't look like source code's using it anymore. So I can that's the only thing that slowed it down a little bit.
How much time? Yeah, Matt, this is amazing. Thank you so much for putting this together. How much time do you think this has freed up from you and Andre to do other things?
Not a ton. If we remember in the middle of a milestone, that's step one.
Yeah.
Then it would take us, 10 minutes maybe each to compile the numbers and add everything up. So 20 minutes a milestone. And then I think
it's the ability that it unlocks, right? Because before we had this, you had to go and look and do the calculation. So you wouldn't do that every day. If you want, you can put this in your home screen if you want, just so they know where you're at. We would do that. But we would do that once a milestone, and now you can do that every day. I think that's the benefit. Not necessarily the time free. That time is freed up, but definitely the opportunity. So thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with context switching and all of that, it adds up. So I think this is great. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, it just came up last week, and it's oh, why don't we just automatically have this? Like, it's one of those like, yeah, we do this every month. It's all that data is easy to get. Why haven't we done this before? It's one of those type of things. So, yeah, but if you see any discrepancies or weirdness in there, let me know. I kind of just copy and pasted a bunch of stuff. So there's chances that things aren't adding up quite right, but I think it's close enough for now. All right, Kai.
I wanted to give a special thanks to Patrick, who's not here, and also Matt for organizing for the investigation into import issues. I did not expect that to come back after meeting yesterday with so much detail and insight. And so that's been really awesome. So a special thanks on here, and hopefully Patrick watches later and sees that. It's also my way of saying I shared the insights, and then I was told about other issues with imports related to this customer that we may also need to look into. And so this is my way of saying we might also need to pull back off and look at that. I've got a call later today to look at another one that's happening, and then I'll probably grab you, Matt, and we might need to take a look at that one too. So I don't know how fast and how much we'll see of this given the customer and everything else going on, but thank you so far.
Where can we see those investigation details? I see the agenda of that meeting. Is that in there?
I created a new issue. I'll put a link in here, or Kai might be able to beat me to it. But yeah, we created a new issue just for the investigation, and then Patrick added a bunch of details and collaborated with a few other people on there. So
okay, so I've seen the link for the agenda and for the YouTube, but not for the issue, so I might have missed it.
I pasted the issue just now. It's 3A in our agenda now.
Awesome, thank you.
Just added it for you so you can take a look. And I'll find the other ones as they keep coming up.
And I'll say this was a specific customer identified this issue, but it wasn't specific to them. It's an issue with the import process in general. So it's good that we kind of figured out what was happening with this, because this is easy to reproduce with any import that had these specific conditions. All right,
Pedro, you've got number 4.
So yeah, that issue talks about front-end allocations, and given the engineering allocations mostly affecting backend resources, that we could potentially dedicate those to pajamas and migrating components. And I brought this issue up because what I think Anoop, if I'm not mistaken, what he's directing folks to do is if we don't have security, performance, or reliability issues that front-end can help with, if we don't have critical near-term customer commitments that we can address with front-end team, or if we don't have extremely painful and high RISE score UX improvements, that those would be dedicated to helping migrate components, pajamas components. And so before we get to that point, I suggested, and we all decided that it could be helpful for us to talk about those specific kinds of issues in the next prioritization session that will happen next Monday or this Monday. I never know if I should say this Monday or next Monday, but yeah, you know. So yeah, that's a reminder for Kai, Matt, and Andre to add those kinds of issues there. I initially added this point to the agenda for us to discuss it, but we reached an agreement, so I'm now sharing that here under point A. I don't know who added point 4B. I don't know if it was me, but anyway, that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Peter. We can take a look on the on that call. I'll just add that detail about the team itself, it being understaffed at the moment. We're hiring to backfill a position, and one of our engineers is mostly focused on VS Code. So basically, have 2 engineers for code review, and we have the already ongoing topic of the merge request merge widget, plus the merge request report working group widgets working group work. So we can take a look at it, but we already have a lot of the topics that I feel like kind of like going hand in hand with some usability improvements and everything. So, but we can take a look at it, see if we have some spare.
In that case, Amy, you can voice your point.
Sure. I'm going to be the noisy one who advocates for my team because we don't have any engineers. And our quasi-engineer, Axel, is about to have his first child. So we are hoping nothing breaks for the next couple of months. So if anybody wants to, throw some love our way, that'd be cool. That would be a great time. So carry on.
Okay, thank you for that. If I think this might be interesting to also suggest in the, I don't know if you have done it already, but it would be interesting to suggest this in the code review channel, so that if people have some spare time or don't know what to do with those, I think 10% of their time to work on other things, they could help with docs, for example, if they're passionate about it. And so
Do that.
I'm doing that now on my front end channel. So way ahead of you.
Great minds think alike. Okay. Amy, you have the next point.
Okay, so this is a contractually obligated statement. I am running a different process than most of the technical writing team. And based on the recent guidance that got published for the technical writers, I am required to say these things to you. I push commits to branches unless you tell me not to, or I see that you are struggling to fix something in a pipeline and my pushing a commit will terminate your pipeline and just make you cranky, or for some other reason that I can't think of right now, mostly having to do with, it looks like this merge request is painful and maybe I should just not add to the pain. If you don't want me to push a commit, tell me. That's all I ask. That ends my contractually obligated statement. Thank you, Kai.
And this is my contractually obligated officially way of thanking you for doing that exact thing, because that helps a lot in the when we're crunching and it's trying to get the technical writing, the documentation updates in there. You pushing a commit might be the difference between 4 hours of merging earlier. So just being considerate and being in communication with the engineers is all we ask. And like you said, you outlined the perfect way of the situation to not do it. So
yeah. Don't be
officially
a jerk.
saying thank you.
Carry on.
Don't be a jerk. Yeah. That's it. Pedro.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that exemplifies bias for action, and on like what you're telling me and on paper, I think that's great. But usually I'm not the possibly affected person. So yeah, my question is, has this, you're making this announcements more or less, is it because it has negatively affected someone in the past? Why do you think it's worth bringing that up?
Because I had to fight very hard to even get this allowed. The original guidance proposed for the technical writing team was you do not commit to other people's branches, period. To which we're being recorded. I disagreed.
Okay. And are those guidelines changed, or have they changed, or are they going to change? as a
The
result of that conversation?
the guidelines were changed to you need to talk to your teams. So that was as much ground as I could get the rest of the team to give me. And so here we are. What it means for
Okay,
this
it's an
team,
iteration.
what it means in this case is I'm still doing exactly what I was, but I have to say it to the team.
Okay, yeah, but now it's written in the handbook. Okay, thank you so much. Noted. It's recorded and it will be publicly available on YouTube. So there's no doubt. You can sign on the last page.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, Kai.
We are like at / overtime. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this. I didn't realize this had merged because I haven't gotten to my email yet this morning, but apparently this has already merged. So I was just curious, sort of just to see how people were feeling, or if people had thoughts, or if you had seen it at all, because I don't know. I'm assuming it got sort of widely circulated, but not incredibly widely circulated. But there is a new proposal that I think if teams are responsible, if you merge code and it is responsible for an S1 or S2 incident on GitLab, then teams involved go into like sort of an immediate 5-day engineering allocation is maybe the best way to phrase that. It's a production change lock, and you're not really allowed to work on any features or do anything else until this has been rectified. At least 5 days, I think, is the terminology actually. So I thought it'd be interesting to chat about if we had time. Normally we blow through an agenda, but we did not today. So feel free to add thoughts or comments async, or share them now in the last minute or so that we've got.
Okay, I'll be brief on mine. I think it's reasonable, just because we would do that anyway. Maybe not the whole team, but whenever something like this big happens, like a big incident or something, we would act to rectify it and to find ways to mitigate it. And probably not the whole 5 days, but that can probably allow us to build more mechanisms to last longer or clean the tech debt that caused it. So I see this as a positive thing. It has also a cost impact, where you're starting to feel like if I just go very sloppy on my merge requests, I have a cost to pay after that. I do think they cleaned up the language about the reviewer. That was a bit of a contentious issue, and I feel like it's better now. Where if the reviewer merged, I think those teams, the team of the reviewer would also be affected, and I feel like that was a bit of overreaching. But as it is now, I think it's fair game, and let's try it out and see how it goes. Matt, any thoughts?
Yeah, you said it great. I don't have anything to add on top of that. I agree.
So let's work to not have this happen to our teams.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. I agree. And it'll be interesting to see how it works after the first few of these start coming up, which hopefully won't be our team. Let some other teams work out the kinks of the process. And
I'd like to not pilot this.
yeah, exactly. Let's
do our best.
hopefully we never have to do this. That would be the goal.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. We're
That's
at
it.
and over. So enjoy the rest of your week. And Andre, thanks for the FYI down below.
Sure, just justify. Bye.
Bye-bye.